Welcome to TLDR with two nerds and a truck. Today we're talking about Bruce Peninsula National Park. What do we have to talk about first about this?
It's very early.
It is very early.
It's very early. It's our last day here. This is our third trip, and I think this is going to end up being our first TLDR. So what this is this going to be the two of us looking at scenery, talking about our stay at a campground. And it's TLDR because in theory, it's going to be if you don't have the time to read our blog post. But in reality, it's kind of ironic because these are going to take longer than reading a blog post.
Good point. But we have a good discussion here, and we hope you enjoy it.
So first off, registration and check-in. So registration booking here is not anywhere near as easy as it is with Ontario parks. And I don't know if I just got spoiled on how slick the Ontario provincial park system is. But the first time we booked here was a complete mess. They use the same system as the revenue agency where you have to verify with your bank account. And there was just a whole bunch of mess where it wasn't finding my email address, and then I'd use it, and then it wanted me to change my path. It took me a good half hour, I think, if I remember correctly, to book this campground the first time around. After that, I finally got my account set up, but it was so messy. Once I was in, then it was no problem, and it's very similar to the Ontario Parks setup, but it was a few layers of hassle that I don't necessarily think should be necessary for booking a campground.
Beyond that, the system is set up very split up. So you have to pay separately for your car and your user admission. And then we had to pay in advance for our
You pay for the campsite first.
Yeah.
And then when you get here, then you pay for your visitor fees. And you have to book parking separately for different places. But it's kind of confusing because some places will say this covers the parking for that. And then other places will say your camping permit doesn't cover parking anywhere. So you have to take things with a grain of salt. I think in theory, the parking is supposed to be covered at Singing Sands, Visitor Center, etc. Because I've seen a few references to that. And I've only seen, I think, 2 references to it saying that your camping permit only covers you for your campsite alone. So it's stuff to keep in mind. It's a bit of a hassle.
Well, when I came in, we had apparently already paid for our user admission, even though we have the Parks Pass, and I'm a new Canadian, so I have the Canoe app, which gets me in for free. So I actually got a refund for that, but our car was not paid for at the time, and I don't know if that's something we could have done online or not.
We have to pay for a car separately?
We did, so it kind of offset a lot of the refund on that. So at the end of the day, it all works out. I paid for what I needed to pay for, but it was just more hassle than I was really hoping to deal with.
I just like that Ontario Parks, you book your stay, and that's it. Yep. Unless you want to rent a canoe, which is totally sane. You don't need to book a canoe when you register or anything, and I don't even think you've got that option. But I mean, it's one thing to have an extra fee when you get there because you decide to do something else that's totally optional. I don't like being hit with extra fees, surprised when you get there. Yep. And the thing with the car, I don't think I saw anything about having to pay for a car, and I don't remember having to pay for the car for the last 2 trips.
Yeah, so I don't recall.
Bizarre. So anyway, yeah, it's a bit of a mess. And then for the parking, the park is very sprawling. So if you're going to go to Halfway Log Dump or Singing Sands or anywhere, I guess Singing Sands isn't a great example because apparently it's covered there, but you have to book your parking ahead of time. And there was something about how for Singing Sands, it's covered, but that certain times of the year it's busy, so you can book ahead and get a refund if you've got your visitor fee paid for or something. It's very confusing. Not a fan of the setup. Anyway, we're going to rant about that for an hour because it is quite a mess. But check-in, I'm assuming, was friendly. You've done the check-in all 3
absolutely.
times.
Yeah, definitely friendly. It's fine. It's great process. Everybody's nice. It's awesome.
And honestly, the staff have nothing to do with the mess of the system.
Exactly.
So whatever. Maps and signage. So the park map is actually a set of 2 booklets. There's the campground booklet and there's the day use booklet, and there's some crossover between the 2. So the campground's primarily concerned with the actual 3 campgrounds and yurt area that's in the camping section of the park, whereas the day use one goes into more Halfway Log Dump and the other trails and stuff like that. They're very clear. They're very accurate. I haven't noticed anything in the way of discrepancies that I can think of. Very easy to read. The campground's very easily laid out. The signage is great. Everything is very clear. I have no complaints. They should get whoever is their cartographer and loan them out to Ontario Parks. they have some interesting cartography going on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
National parks are always great with signs. I love it. Yeah.
yeah. Waste and water. That's a weird situation. So none of the sites here have any kind of service at all. There's no electric sites. There's no water. There's no sewage at the sites. I haven't noticed water taps throughout the park. There might be, I guess. But generally speaking, you have to go to the waste area to get your water filled and your tank dumped. And it's a weird situation there. It's a loop off the main site, like the main campground road, on the other side of the gate. So it's as you're coming into the park. And it's a wide area. Like, it's not a lane. Like, I wouldn't say it's a lane with a bypass or anything like that. It's like a wide loop that doesn't really have lanes. But the fill station's on one side, but it's also got a power washing station for your boat right there, which is cool.
It's a cool perk, yeah.
Yeah, and then the dump station's on the other side. So you'd kind of have to either, I guess, loop your hose under your truck to get both. But there's no way you can do your pump and dump in the same pass, because you'd have to like back up to get to the other one, like back up and like it's not a great layout.
And the dump is kind of oddly, even though it's like a D shape, it's oddly in a corner of the D shape. I know that doesn't really make sense, but there's a bunch of garbage cans and it's kind of next to it. And so you're going to need your extension hose kind of longer than normal, which works. It's just kind of weird.
So ideally what I think you need to do is dump where you are before you come to the park, fill if you can, fill on the way in. And you do that by going to the second entry to the D and then pulling up to the left and filling. And then exit the area, do your camping, and then dump on the way out of the park. Like, I really think you need to make two completely separate trips, because once you pull out of the D, there's not really a good place to turn around and go back the other way.
Right.
It's odd.
There is a nice long hose, like you said. You could pull the hose around to the other side. It's just awkward.
But if you're pulling a trailer...
Yeah. No, I get it.
Like, you have to back the whole thing up to move over to get to the other side, because they're not across from each other, but it's a weird situation.
Right.
Like, you'll know it when you see it. It's just odd. Connectivity. So it's hit and miss. We have pretty good internet at our site. We're in the Birches campground, and some degree of internet at Indian Head Cove. But pretty much anywhere else in the park, there was nothing.
Yeah, I know Poplar, we were driving around and we had no connectivity really.
Singing Sands, I think we had a little bit if we were way out on the beach. But generally speaking, don't come here and expect to have reliable internet. They do have Wi-Fi available at the campground hub, which is essentially their comfort station. I haven't tried it this trip, and we didn't do it the last trip, but the first trip we did and it wasn't working. So that's why we haven't really done it this trip, because it's kind of a hassle anyway, especially where we had internet at our site. So then there's accessibility. Now, it's really hit and miss with accessibility. Like, in general, it's good for if you're camping. The campground is as accessible as you can expect, really, for a very rural campground. The sites are big. If you get one, especially in Birches, there's lots of flat space, so you can get around easily. The campground hub is accessible. There's lots of wheelchair accessible parking everywhere. One of the yurts has a wheelchair ramp, and apparently that's fully accessible. We didn't book it, so I don't know what it's like on the inside. But in general, I find that the national parks put a lot of effort into accessibility. The only thing is that what you can do, there's not a ton. So a lot of places there are like a few easy trails or whatever. The only easy trails in the park, so there is... Singing Sands, which has a boardwalk for a good part of it, and then the other loop of it is a fairly easy trail, but then it goes out on sand. The sand is a weird, like, hard pack kind that's pretty easy to walk on for the most part, but it's not wheelchair accessible beyond the boardwalk. There are a lot of great views from the boardwalk, though. There are. That is pretty much the only wheelchair accessible trail in the park where you can actually see something. The first part of the Georgian Bay Trail to go out to Indian Head Cove is wheelchair accessible, but there's nothing to see. It becomes not wheelchair accessible a fair distance before you get to the coast. So if you want like a quick walk through the woods or whatever, or wheel through the woods, I suppose, that works. But you're not going to see anything. And it's the same with halfway log dump is that it's pretty wheelchair accessible for the first amount of it, and it's only a kilometer trail, and it's all very easy. But right before you get to the coast, before you even get a view of the coast, it just gets
rocky.
Yeah, if you have any kind of mobility issues, you're not going to be able to go beyond that point. So it just goes from easy to oh my god in no time. And it's one thing if there was an overlook, if it was wheelchair accessible to an overlook and you could still see the view but not go down, that's one thing. But you don't see anything if you've got mobility issues. The only other trail to mention for accessibility would be the Cypress Lake Trail, which goes around the lake at the campground.
Yeah.
Now, the section of the trail that's facing the campground that goes along the front of all three campgrounds is wheelchair accessible. It's boardwalk. Beyond that, I think it actually gets more rough. So I don't think the whole trail is wheelchair accessible. We haven't done that one. Oh, no, it's not wheelchair accessible because the reason we didn't do it was because it was flooded out.
Okay.
So no, it wasn't. That was rough. So yeah, that's the accessibility. I mean, like for a camping experience, it's pretty accessible. The basics are covered, but in terms of actually getting to see the sights, not so much. Is how I do it. Moving right along, pets. You're allowed to bring dogs. They have to be leashed at all times. You have to pick up after them, and you're not allowed to leave them alone on your campsite or in vehicles. Are the big restrictions there. We saw the cutest dog on the trail. Oh, that wasn't here. That was at the other one, but it was that he looked like a little caterpillar. It was really cute.
That little guy was adorable indeed.
Yeah. Beyond that, so we already covered permits and parking through registration, which, that whole mess.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of very time-based restrictions. And honestly, I'm not going to remember them off the top of my head, so I recommend you look at the blog anyway. So much for the TLDR. But like alcohol and generators are banned between certain hours, as is cannabis. There's just a few, and there's a bit of discrepancy there because at one point it says between 10 and 7, and another says 10 to 8. So I don't know which one you're looking at. But I guess I'd go 10 to 8 to be safe. Because they don't joke around with the fees, apparently. Like, we've never been hit with anything, but I've heard stories. So, Aurora, we unfortunately have not seen the Aurora during any of our trips here. And it's been 3 of them now. We've tried.
Yep.
But the weather and the timing does not line up for us. There are a few spaces that would be good for it. First of all, we're in an area of very low light pollution, no matter where you are in the park. If you go out in front of... We're getting told off by a squirrel. If you go out to the front of the campgrounds overlooking Cypress Lake, it's basically a northwest view. So you will get a north view if you look to the right. So you can see the northern lights over part of the lake. If you come to Indian Head Cove, where we're at right now, if you look kind of straight ahead to where we are, there's that beach over there. If you're standing there, you've got more or less a north-facing view. Now it is a 1.7 kilometer walk to get there from the parking lot. So as far as hauling Aurora equipment and being able to set up for a few hours, it's a bit of a trek.
It's a pretty easy walk, but yeah, that's a long walk when it's really dark out, and knowing that you're going to have to walk back in the dark.
Yeah, and just getting your stuff over these rocks down here, you're definitely going to want like headlamps like we use. It really does make things easier. But other than that, up in Tobormory is really good for it. We're about 20 minutes away from Tobormory, I think, and that's north facing over Lake Huron, Georgian Bay. So there's no light pollution up that way. I've seen gorgeous photos from out there. We just haven't been there for them. Anyway, moving along, comfort station and washrooms.
The hub. It's really cool. It's actually a really cool hangout area.
Yeah, like it's not just at provincial parks. There's the washrooms, the showers, the laundry, and then maybe a playground. Which, I mean, we're adults. We're not going to hang out everywhere,
Right.
Here though, it's what all is there? There's the showers. I think there was laundry, washrooms. It's a gorgeous building. Like, it looks beautiful.
And that's part of what I like about it is it's really modern and
the washrooms are very clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's like a playground and there's a rock climbing setup back there.
There's like a safe place for your kids to play on rocks, which is really nice.
Because, like, honestly, I love climbing the rocks down here that you can see, but I wouldn't trust a kid down there, so this gives them an opportunity to play on some rocks of their own. God, there's a big fire pit. It's a beautiful area, and I think they do their programming there in the summer.
Yeah.
which we haven't been here for because we've hiked or we've camped here twice in the fall and one in the spring, and both on the shoulder seasons of the camping.
So it's also called Head of Trails if you're looking it up.
No, it's not.
Isn't it? Isn't that where the Head of Trails is?
No, Head of Trails is here. We parked at Head of Trails to come here. The campground hub is across from the opening to the Birches.
Scratch that. I was confused.
It's very early in the morning, as you can tell by the view. No,
right.
so the campground hub is
You're
where
right.
the laundry and showers and whatnot. I keep saying laundry. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure there's laundry. We've been to a lot of. We're on week 7 or 8 of our Northern Ontario trip, and kind of on the way home. So
Yeah.
they're kind of blending together at this point, and we didn't do laundry on this stop.
Well, you got it on video now. You were right, and I'm wrong.
I'm always right. Anyway, yeah. So, but to what he's saying, the Head of Trails is where it's the Head of Trails. It's where all the major trails in the campground converge. They also have a big, very modern, gorgeous building for the washrooms, and they are also very clean.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they don't have showers or laundry there, though.
I think you're right.
And I didn't see a playground. Although this is a playground. Like,
Yeah, this is our playground.
This is our playground. So yeah, so the washrooms, and they also had a modern looking washroom kind of by our area at the campground. Like, it doesn't look like an outhouse. They do have traditional scary looking outhouses too, but they in general, you're not that far from like a gorgeous. I can't believe I'm saying gorgeous for campground washrooms, but they're really nice here. You know, there's a camp store. There's 2 camp stores. There's a little bit of a camp store in the registration office, and then there's one at the visitor center. So now you've been the one at the registration office.
Right. It's not massive, to be honest. I was focused on registering, so I didn't, really go around and take too much a look at the wares.
Yeah, our notes from the last one said that it was just like merch.
Yeah.
Like there weren't snacks or
right.
or supplies or anything. But on that note, the visitor center.
Yes.
So the visitor center here was the first time we went into like a capital V visitor center, and like because of the last few years and us taking things safe, we haven't been in museums in far too long.
Right.
And this was a really safe opportunity, and there were not many people there, and it was a museum. That is a museum.
It really is.
So we really appreciated that. The exhibitors. Oh, I didn't even mention with the accessibility. The visitor center is wheelchair accessible. It's all ramps throughout it and wide spaced and great. But it's a beautifully laid out, beautifully appointed. Tons of information, amazing displays, like all kinds of like artifacts and stuff. Just beautiful. Yeah,
definitely check it out.
Yeah, day use areas. So day use here is kind of, so we're back to, I've mentioned this in other videos that are probably going to get published after this one. But I tend to use day use as a synonym for picnic area, but I guess it's more just where you hang out during the days. So aside from the trails, there is the Head of Trails, which does have, I'm pretty sure it has picnic tables there. There's picnic tables in the parking lot. It's not the most scenic, but I guess that would qualify as day use. The main day use area to me here is Singing Sands, because that's got amazing picnic views, and they've got receptacles for your hot coals, but I didn't see where people use the hot coals.
Yeah, I didn't notice either. I'm not sure if you're supposed to bring your own, but yeah, they've got like a little lofted area, like a viewing platform, and it's a really cool place, and I agree that would be that day use.
If I was going for picnicking, it would be there. Other than that, there is the campground hub, which has all that playground area and green space, and I think there's a soccer field or something back there, so there's plenty of places to picnic there as well.
Yep.
So the campsites. So there's 3 campgrounds, and they're all pretty small. We're in Birches, which is the center one. That's the one that's best for, I think it's the only one where you can go with trailers, actually. And a lot of them are pull through, which is what we like. And then there's Tamarack, which is the one that's closer to the front gate. And then it's Poplar. Poplar's the last one. Poplar has some really cool sites, and I'm kind of salty that we can't bring campers in them. No, there's this one site, I forget the number, it's like 56 or something.
Oh.
But on one side of it, it's marsh, and it opens up like this like pond that comes right up to your campsite.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the campsite is woods. So you've got, as far as birding goes, you've got tons of opportunity there. beautiful.
And you're off on your own in this little nook, like
Yeah, like
cute.
it's tons of like the from the road privacy isn't great, but you can't see any other campsite aside from across the road from you, and it's beautiful. But in our area, there's a lot of tree cover. It's very tall trees though, so it's not the best for solar.
Yeah.
It's not very private. You can see your entire row of campsites of other campers, but it doesn't feel unprivate necessarily because it's so big. They do have a weird setup with the picnic areas, at least in our area. I'm not sure if it's the same with the rest of the pull-throughs, but basically they'll have a campsite and then they'll have a big open space that's like the communal picnic area. So that's where they've got 2 sets of picnic tables and 2 things of fire pits and whatnot. And then they've got the other campsite. And then they've got the next campsite right next to it. And then their open space is on the other side shared with the next campground over. So it's I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
But it's huge. Like it doesn't feel like it's a communal area. It's just when you realize that the next camper is really far off that you're like, oh yeah, that's shared space in between us.
And I don't mind a little less privacy when we're so close to the lake, right? Just a quick little walk down to the Cypress Lake Trail, and then you're like on the lake.
And I don't mind the less privacy when it's from a distance, because there's a difference between like visual privacy and like they can hear every word you're saying. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to feel like someone's camped out below my window. Like we've had campsites where we're like you can hear the people talking outside your window because they're basically 2 feet away, and I'm not a fan of that. But this is they're off in the distance. You can see them, but you're not hearing a word anyone says.
Yep, agreed.
So I appreciate that. And then there's yurts, which we haven't seen the last few trips, but we went out there, and I remember they were cute.
Yeah,
I think they're the Authentics, but I'm not sure. This is getting really long, so let's get to the hiking. There's stuff to do in general, but hiking is the reason to come to this park, realistically. So there's a bunch of different trails. The Georgian Bay Trail is the one we did to get here. Now, I was under the impression it was 1 kilometer long, but this morning it was 1.7 kilometers. So keep that in mind. And as we'd said before, it's a very easy walk up until the end.
Right. I love it, partially because I know what it's leading me to, right?
That's the thing. It's a nice walk through the woods. There's not really anything stunning on the way. There's a nice little waterfall sometimes. There's a little bridge that goes over a waterfall. It's completely dried up right now, so it just looks kind of weird.
I agree. It's still a nice view, though.
Yeah.
You get the nice view of the lake.
And then there's this really cool stacked rock at one point.
Yep.
That I think is cool, but it's not really great for birding. There's not really any scenery. It's just trees everywhere.
Yep. A lot of cedar trees.
But then you come to this. So that's what you do. And now the interesting thing is, and we might as well just talk about it here instead of a separate section. So this is Indian Head Cove. And I never hear about Indian Head Cove when I'm reading about Bruce Peninsula, because everyone always talks about the grotto. Now the grotto's a little bit further to our left. It's a rough walk to get there.
Just a couple 100 meters, but yeah, it is rough.
Yeah, it's scaling rock to get there. But it's not, in my opinion, it does not live up to this. And because you hit this first, it's interesting because you're like, wow, the grotto is famous and it's still coming up. Let's get there. And then you're like, oh. Yeah, you kind of look down and it's this little cave thing. And it's like, oh, that's really neat. That's cool enough.
And there's that arch that's really close by there, and that's fun to see. Definitely go look at it.
It's anticlimactic, though. Like, this is gorgeous.
I recommend go look at the grotto, and then come back, look at the arch. It's a little bit better, in my opinion. And then come back a little further, hit Indian Head Cove, and plan to spend the day here. Yeah. Because it's awesome.
Yeah, so we like to come first thing in the morning.
Yep.
Because we're not fans of people. And if you're going to come here in the afternoon, especially in the summer, you need to be a fan of people. We've seen pictures, and everywhere you can see in this video is just people everywhere, in the water, everything. Just every little flat surface, it's just people everywhere. I can't even imagine. Cannot even imagine.
On that note, I have noticed on our trips here, there's a fair amount of garbage around, which is really frustrating. I think it has more to do with the volume of people than people like being malicious or anything. But you'll see bottles and wrappers and things around, and it's pretty annoying. And
I mean, it's one of the many reasons we're not fans of people.
Yeah, that's true. But just be aware.
Yeah,
it's here.
It does kind of
take your stuff with you. Make sure it stays in your pocket. Make sure it doesn't fall out. Yeah.
So Cypress Lake Trail we already covered. That's the one that goes around the campground. I think it's 3 or 3.5 kilometers long, if I remember correctly. It's a big lake, and it just walks around it. You can see a good portion of it on the boardwalk that goes from one end of the campground to the other, like the actual camping area.
Yeah.
And then it gets more rustic from there, as I understand. Like I said, it was flooded out the one time that we tried to do that, and then we've always, honestly, when it comes down to it, I feel I sound like such a princess, but like I have to budget my mobility because I've got tendon issues, and when it comes down to it, I can walk around a lake. That's okay, it's okay.
Yep.
Or I can come here, and
Right.
if I'm gonna walk, I would rather come here. So
I can understand that.
I'm sure it's a lovely walk. It just it's got some competition in Bruce Peninsula. When you see like the Bruce Trail and this and halfway log dump and stuff, it's hard to spend your mobility walking around a lake. That's just a lake. It's a lake.
Yep, I don't blame you.
Mar Lake Trail. I have not done that one. You have.
I did it on our last trip, and it's really cool. It's a short version of it. It's more rough, so it does have hillier parts. I remember climbing up some fairly steep rock sections.
Well, that one's rated difficult.
It is, yeah. And I don't remember enough to be able to give a lot of definition to that, but I do agree on the difficulty rating. But if you can handle that, it offers some really great views, like some really cool walks through the woods. And then you end up at what I presume is Mar Lake. I remember coming down there.
No, you pass Mar Lake and you end up at the beach. It's the Pebble. I think they called it the Pebble Beach or something here.
Right. They're like right next to each other, as I recall. Yeah. So I remember seeing some mergans or ducks down on the lake and then turning around and going onto that Pebble Beach, which is just, it's got that fun, almost spherical rock kind of texture that you're climbing around on. And it's a kind of a fun playground, in my opinion. Great views.
Now, something to mention, because or I guess we'll get to the other trails and we'll talk about the water. But so Horse Lake Trail we did for the first time this trip. That also heads out from the head of trails. It just takes you out to Horse Lake. It's a cute walk. There's a lot of boardwalk as you get past the lake.
Yep.
We saw the cutest little raccoons there.
Oh, they were cute.
They were cute. Again, a really nice walk through the woods. As you get to the end of it, because it's a very easy trail. It's marked moderate, but the trail right up till the end is easy. It's just when you get to the end, you get to one of those stone beaches that's more difficult. So again, if you want a really nice walk through the woods, that's got a completely different feel than this one.
It does.
Than Georgian Bay Trail. That opens out on one of those Georgian Bay beaches. So halfway log dump is the next one to talk about. It's the same thing. It's I think it's about a kilometer if I remember correctly. We didn't actually do it this trip, but we've done it twice before, I think.
Yeah.
One thing to mention there is that it's a bit of a drive from the campground.
It really is.
And it's not that it's far. I think it's only one exit up, but it's like several kilometers off the road, and it's kilometers. Like it's the kind of driving where a kilometer feels like it's 2 or 3 because you got to go slow. It's like rough road and kind of banked and really tight curves and just it's not fun to drive on. The walk itself it's easy enough. It's flat for the most part. Wide trails. It's not paved, but it's well packed. But just before you get to the end, it's a very steep downhill over these like big rocks. Like I want to say like 6 inches or so.
Yeah, I was
like
picturing a little bigger than that even, but yeah,
they're not boulders and they're not gravel. So it's like this weird in between. So it's kind of hard to, because you have to kind of balance on each one as you walk. So it's a bit rough. The whole beach down there is the same way though. It's these big rocks that are round, like very rounded. They're not, and they don't nestle in very well. So as you walk, they kind of move with you.
And that's, to me, that's the amazing cool part. So halfway log dump is definitely a must-do in my book, even though it's a little challenging because of the annoying drive and walk. But those rocks, you can kind of hear them clinking around, and you know you're on like a mountain over these rocks. And it's stable. You're not going to like sink in or anything. But it's just such a cool feeling to be like kind of clink, clink, clink. And they're almost spherical, like I said, pretty large. One of the trips there were a lot of spiders, just a heads up.
Yeah, a lot. Every stone you'd step on, you'd get these big black spiders coming out. Anyways, I want to say about what he's raving about walking on rocks, I will point out he does not have mobility issues.
That is true.
If you have any kind of weak ankle or sore feet or tendon issues, those rocks are, they're something.
But if once you are kind of done with seeing the really cool halfway log dump rocks, look over to your left. And very shortly, like 100 meters down or something like that, you come to this totally different kind of rock. It's like slate rocks. And to me, it kind of looks like a castle. It's like this weird, almost like in Indian Head Cove here, where you see kind of the flat sections where they're in layers. And it's just another cool playground to just play around in. And it's a lot of fun. I could spend a couple hours there easily.
I've never made it that far because the rocks are quite difficult. So I would go straight down to the beach, and there's this one rock that I'll sit on and soak my feet. And the water there. So what I want to talk about with the water there is, so much like Indian Head Cove here, which you can't see because it's still sunrise, but the rocks are all this white, like very white rocks. And then the water is like shallow, and the white rocks make it this gorgeous, gorgeous, like turquoise. Like it's like something you see in like Caribbean advertising. It's just the most beautiful. Really, we saw it at the Flower Pot Island too.
Yep,
it's just gorgeous. So when you go to Halfway Log Dump, it's the same thing, but it's as far as you can see. Like it's this shallow water, very turquoise water. Like definitely go on a sunny day, because it's not the same effect when it's cloudy. So if it's a bright sunny day, that white rock and that clear, clean water, it's amazing. Like it is something to behold.
It really is. Every image you take is going to look like a postcard.
Yeah, so we covered all those. So Singing Sands is the last hiking one that we've got down for in the campgroundy area, I guess. Oh no, I've got a few more. Anyway, this is the last one that we've done, I think. But so they've got two trails. I think we mentioned this earlier. One is the boardwalk trail, which is accessible, and the other one's like not super accessible, but it's a nice little walk through the woods and then across the beach.
Yep.
The beach is weird there. It's very strange. It looks otherworldly. Like you can see the rocks here look otherworldly. They're almost the same kind, but it almost looks like coral or like skulls, like piles of skulls.
I call it moon rock. I don't know what the moon looks like for real. I've never been there, but it just kind of makes me think of a moon rock.
It looks like something that would, in these vast like plains of really flat sand with like weird little inlets of water. It looks like I could see it in a sci-fi movie. Like I could totally see this being used as a different planet set. You know
definitely.
what I mean? It just looks otherworldly. It's just really cool. But apparently it's also a swimming beach.
Well,
yeah, so they've got the two trails there. They've got the wheelchair accessible boardwalk one and the one through the woods.
And the water there, you can tell it's really shallow, really far out. I haven't actually walked out in there, and we haven't been there in a season where people have been swimming, but
funny thing about going there mid-October.
it really looks like it's one of those places you could walk, figuratively speaking, a kilometer out and be up to your hips. Not quite that bad, but
I mean, it's probably a good half kilometer because you can see sandbars really far out.
You can.
So then there's Little Dumps Lookout. We never mentioned High Dump.
Oh gosh.
Oh my God. So back to the toilet situation. When you're at Halfway Log Dump.
Yep. Just before you get there, as I recall.
I think so, yeah.
There's a kind of a corner in the trail, and the trail hooks to the left, and there's a sign saying high dump to the right. And you look over to the right, and there's these lofted washrooms right there.
High Dump. I mean, that is not High Dump. High Dump is a beach or something beyond that, but
it's the trail that goes in front of it.
Yes, the sign points at vaulted toilets for High Dump. So
somebody had their inner 12-year-old when they designed that setup. They had to have done that.
I don't think so. I don't know, because those vaulted toilets are what the national parks tend to do. That's what they had over at Flower Pot Island too.
High Dump.
High Dump. I know. He is 12 years old. But yeah, so anyways, Little Dumps Lookout, that's at the visitor center. That's an easy walk through the woods. It's about a kilometer, if I remember correctly. No, 600 meters. It's really short, and it just takes you out to a lookout on the lake. It's nice enough. It's a nice little walk through the woods. I don't think it's wheelchair accessible, but it's probably pretty close. Like if you've got mobility issues, it's one of the easy trails. But it was kind of, it's nice to walk through the woods. But again, I kind of I have a high bar now.
Yeah, now the visitor center is a bit of a drive too. So because it's up in the
like 20
Tobormory
minutes.
area. Yeah, so don't expect to just take a quick walk down to the visitor center.
No.
It's a bit of a drive, but it's really nice. And there's that really cool like fire tower kind of lookout.
Yeah, there's the fire tower. That's really tall. He's been up there. I haven't. Then there's also Burnt Point Loop, which is another trail at the visitor center, which we haven't done. It's rated moderate. I think it was 3.5 kilometers, if I remember correctly, or 4. Maybe it's 4.5. We've been doing a lot of hiking lately, so they kind of blur together. Now, Flower Pot Island was another. There's a hike out there that's been many, many, many campgrounds ago, because that was May this year.
Yep.
We do a whole post on that. So as far as TLDR, we don't have a video on that because we didn't start doing that till after we were there. But go see our post on Flower Pot Island because that was really cool. And again, lots of that turquoise, gorgeous turquoise water.
Lots of it.
So as far as attractions here go, there's the grotto. It's just, it's along the hike here. It's a much more difficult hike to get there, and you do have to scale up and down some rocks, like some pretty serious ones. You're going to want some strength and flexibility to be able to do it.
Take your time. Maybe don't do it when it's rainy.
Definitely don't do it when it's rainy. So they have a stat, they published a stat somewhere, and they average something like a death a year from people dying off the cliffs here. So not to get dark or anything, but like, yeah, definitely be careful, you know?
Yeah.
So there's Halfway Log Dump, Little Cove. Now, Little Cove, we didn't talk. It's basically, it's kind of like Halfway Log Dump, but not as nice. So that's a beach area that's up by, is it past the visitor center or before the visitor center? It's a drive. It's like a 15-minute drive away.
Yeah.
And you have to drive off the highway a bit, and then you come to a parking lot that's 300 meters away from the beach. Now, apparently this gets seriously busy in the summer. It's not a swimming beach. It's a rocky beach, and it's beautiful. Weird parking situation there. I think we might have gotten ripped off this time when we went. So you're supposed to book parking, like it's paid parking, and it's completely separate from the parks.
And it's expensive.
And it's municipal parking. So you don't pay your parking to Parks Canada. You pay it to whatever City of Tobormory or whoever oversees that, right? It was $20 for 4 hours. That's wild.
Yeah.
You know? But then it also said that you have to book online between, I think it was April 15th and October 15th. And we went after October 15th, and it had us pay. But then there was something at the site that made it sound like it's not paid parking after that. So I'm not entirely clear. Like, if you don't have to book your parking, I don't know. It was weird. I definitely look into that, but I think we might have paid $20 and not needed to. Either way, I guess I'd rather pay $20 that we didn't need to than to have to pay a parking fee because we didn't know we had to. Right.
Right. So the trail is just this long paved section that's fairly steep down.
Very steep.
And it goes to a cool rocky beach. Not as nice as Halfway Log Dump, but it is kind of a similar vibe. But then you have to go back up that hill when you're done.
It's bad. But isn't it paved? It's paved.
And wide.
And the dumb thing is, it looks like it was an actual road because there's a kind of an area at the bottom where the washrooms are. So it looks like, because they've got it gated now. So it's like at some point you could have driven down there. So it's not really mobility friendly. Yeah,
I would not dare to take a wheelchair down that ramp.
No. It reminds me of, there's sites that are like, I can't remember, on Facebook there's a group that's about like attempts being made at wheelchair accessibility. It's the ramps that are just wild. It's like that. So biking, you're not allowed to bike or walk on the main roads in the campground, which is weird because a lot of the times we see, if there's no dedicated bike trail, they'll just say, oh, bike through the campground road. So they don't want you doing anything on the campground roads except for driving.
Yep.
Like the main campground road. Yep. So there is a long multi-use trail along the side of the camp. Like, I say campground, but it's like through the whole campground area. Like it goes all the way to the grotto parking and whatnot from the front office. And that looks pretty wide and flattish. And, you know, I mean, it's intended for running, walking, and biking.
Yep.
In terms of swimming, as we mentioned, Indian Head Cove here, people swim here. I don't understand that. It's very cold all times of year, and it doesn't seem safe, you know?
It gets really rough sometimes.
Well, it's very calm now, but even when it's calm, it's still, I don't know, there's something about it that's kind of, not a sinister vibe, because it's beautiful and it's gorgeous and it's peaceful, but it just seems like I wouldn't want to mess with that, you know?
Well, there's a lot of the large flat rocks like that you get a little bit of growth, whatever is growing on there, and they're very slippery. So that's kind of...
I'd imagine there's crazy undertows here too.
Probably.
So anyways, there's, as far as swimming goes, there's Halfway Log Dump that we were talking. It's all rocks all the way out. So there aren't really any sandy beaches here except for Singing Sands, which is the swimming beach, but it's not really, I wouldn't call it a swimming beach. It's a big sandy area that has a very shallow area of water that goes very far out.
Yeah, I would call it more of like you can wade into it. I imagine if you keep going, you can swim, but it feels like
You
you're
would
gonna
have to
have to
go a
go a long
long
way.
way.
So
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if you love to stick your feet in the water and just kind of splash around a little bit.
The sand is a really weird. I don't know if it's the time of year because we haven't been here in the summer, but the sand doesn't strike me as somewhere that you'd go because you know when you go and hang out on the beach, it's
Yeah.
the sand that you put your blanket out and you lay in. It kind of like
Cradles you.
cradles you a bit. This is it's not like pavement, but it's really packed, and it's not like wet sand because like wet sand has a certain texture, but this is like
Yeah.
a weird.
There's a lot of firmness to it. I don't know if it's clay content or what it is, but there's a
It's
lot
just
of
it's an odd sand. Like it doesn't seem like the kind of sand that I'd want to like lay out on a towel on. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't seem comfortable. It would be like laying on concrete, I think. But yeah, so as far as swimming goes, I think those are the main areas, right? There's Little Cove, this one, Halfway Log Dump, Singing Sands. So none of them are really. If you're looking for like a traditional beach, this isn't a place to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a hiking park. Like, don't come here for the swimming. You come here for the hiking, really.
Oh, exactly.
Canoeing is an option. So the Cypress Lake has a motorboat ban on it, which is fine because there's not really anywhere to get a motorboat onto in the first place. There is a little. They called it a boat launch. It's not. It's like a little cement platform, and I don't even know if that's still there because I think that's this time around we saw a little like a deck platform. I think that's where the boat launch was.
Okay.
Because we saw the boat launch on our first trip here, and it was like this busted like hunk of concrete, and there wasn't really anything around it. So it's not like you could drive up and offload your canoe. You're gonna have to haul your canoe in from your campground, walk it up the trail or whatever. But apparently, canoeing and kayaking is welcome on Cypress Lake. We've never seen it on any of our trips.
Right.
Never seen anyone out there. Probably because the launch isn't very friendly. Diving. So there's actually 2 national parks here. I'm not sure why they aren't just the same one. But so basically we're in Bruce Peninsula National Park, and it's overlapped with because the visitor center is for both parks.
Right.
So I guess it has an overlap with Fathom 5 Marine Park, and that national park is underwater. So it's a national park underwater for divers, and it's got shipwrecks and stuff that you can go. It's interesting because anywhere there's cliffs here, you see the signs. Actually, I didn't see the signs here this time. Did you?
No.
Up here, there were signs last trip and the trip before that's like it tells you to be careful on the cliffs because there's people diving beneath and you don't want to kill them.
Oh, right.
They were really dark. I haven't seen those this time.
Yeah, I didn't notice them either. And yeah, go back to the visitor center. There's a lot of stuff that's marine based because of the Fathom 5 overlap.
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, in no way would I out sensory wise, I would never be able to go diving, but I think it sounds really cool. Like I think my hear issues and nose, I would not be able to do that. But I think it must be cool to be swimming under there and seeing shipwrecks and stuff like that. And with the water too, like it's so clean and you can see so far down. Like when you go through, is it Little Dumps Harbor or whatever it is over there? Little Tub Harbor.
Okay.
Like you can see because we took the boat to go over to Flower Pot Island. You can see a far way down,
right?
Like very far down, and it's so clean and it's so turquoise, and it's got to be fun diving down there because you can see everything. Because whenever you see diving, it's always like the dark, you know what I mean, and like plant matter and stuff. And this is just beautiful. But yeah, so we don't actually know anything about diving. It's just hypothesizing here. Bouldering, you talked about that over at the bouldering's offered at Halfway Log Dump, and there's a few rules in there, like you're not allowed to touch the wild daisies, and you've got to. I think it's the first 2 or 3 boulders near the shoreline you're not allowed to go on.
Yep.
Fishing, we've never seen anyone fishing in this park.
We haven't.
But there is fishing on Cypress Lake. I don't know what's in there. There's no information on what's in there. It's just I know that they welcome it apparently. Birding. So birding's different because it's been a weird. Because we've been here very different times a year, and it seems like there's very, very different sets of who comes to visit us at our campsite.
Yep.
You get to talk about this one.
All right. So back in May, we hit the migration, I guess, because there were a lot of birds. It was my first time really getting a good look at a cedar waxwing, and I got to look at lots of them. In front of the Poplar campground on the Cypress Lake Trail, there was a bunch of kind of dead trees in a marshy area. and there were just a flock of cedar waxwing there. We did not see them on this trip, so they must have moved on.
Black-throated green warblers.
Yes, black-throated green warbler was singing to us constantly on our May trip, and on this
right
trip,
in the campsite, like
right.
we were surrounded by them at all times.
Yep. This trip, we didn't hear any of those warblers, unfortunately.
Not a single one.
No, but we were hearing what we were hearing.
Tons of grackles.
Well, the grackles were coming by at sunset.
Yep. But no, and sunrise. When we got up, remember that time we went outside and it sounded like it was just all around us. This noise of, like, I thought it was creaking trees or something, but it was all these grackles screaming.
Yeah,
it was wild. And then also the kinglets. There were a lot of kinglets by our site this time.
They're so hard to photograph because they're so small and they fly around, zip, zip, zip.
Yeah. So other than that, I mean, there's just a bunch of kind of. This was the first campsite where we'd actually discovered the Merlin app, because we were sitting outside, wondering, if there's anything out there that could identify what we were hearing, because we could tell that there were several different kinds of birds. So that's how we knew. That was the first time we're like, oh, that's a black-throated green warbler. I've never heard of that before. So we've been using that ever since. Yeah. Nothing really like standout though. We saw a great blue heron on Horse Lake, and then some mergansers and stuff out on the water. Our daily, because Merlin gives you a daily bird, like your bird of the day, and it's like, oh, maybe you can see this, and it's usually supposed to see something that you have a chance of seeing in your area. And we've gotten the coolest ducks since we've been staying here. It's like the hooded merganser and the bofflehead. And then what was the one you had yesterday, or was that the hooded merganser?
That was the hooded, yep.
But these really wild, like unearthly looking ducks that they look like cartoons. Like, they don't look real at all. And we haven't seen a single one. We've seen the mergansers and seagulls.
Yeah.
Yep. So apparently you can see cool stuff here. We just don't. Hey, we're getting towards the end. Niantic Games.
Yeah, there's 3 portals in our area, in our campground.
Yeah, right up the center of Birches.
Yep.
And then there's several at the visitor center.
Yep.
But the thing is, unless you're in the middle of Birches, you're not really going to be accessing. Like, we're on Rogers. I should have mentioned that with the connectivity, but we're on Rogers wireless. And outside of our campsite, there really isn't enough connectivity to access any of the game stops. You'll be sitting on your campsite and say, oh, let's go do a raid. No, you're not going to do a raid. You're not going to be able to open it as soon as you get close. So basically, like, if you situate yourself in the middle of Birches, you'll have enough internet to access to get your dailies done, but you probably don't want to be in this park for a major event.
Yeah.
But again, like, look at the view here. Like, we're not here to Pokemon. You know what I mean? Or Ingress or whatever.
I think there's a Pokestop here, if I remember right, like the sign to the grotto or something.
Oh, is there? Okay.
I think so.
I mean, there's a few, but they're few and far in between, and kind of hard to access sometimes. Okay, nearby attractions. So we covered a lot of them, but there's also, in Tobormory, there's the Chichimon, which is amazing. It's this giant ferry that goes over to Manitoulin Island, and it's painted with indigenous art, and it's gorgeous. And you saw that for the first time in May. The
whole, like, the end of it opens up and swallows up all the vehicles. It's really cool.
Yeah, I was on that as a kid. I don't remember the painting, though. The painting's got to be new, but I mean, I've traveled on that as a kid, and I think we should do that soon. And it was like a cruise ship, as I remember. Like, I think they've got restaurants and everything on there. So there's Chichimon. There's a lighthouse out there. It's paid parking, but it's really nice to go walk around it. The rocks are kind of like you see here, like that weird. They almost look cell shaded. I remember I took a video walking on these rocks, and I did one over there where walking on it and aiming the video down, it looked like I was walking on like a video game rendering. Yep. It's so interesting, and I've never seen it anywhere but here. Like, we've been to a lot of campgrounds and a lot of different hikes and stuff, and I've never seen rock like this. It's just really interesting, you know.
There's a lot of really touristy restaurants in Tobormory, if that piques your interest.
The big thing is, though, if you're on the off season, because we camp in the spring and the fall, not in the summer. Like 99% of that town is closed. Like, you've got a grocery store, and I think the brewery's open, and good luck doing anything other than that. Like, none of the restaurants have been open any time that we're here, aside from at the brewery. And but it's kind of sad because they've got there was like a taco stand that had a cool name, and like they have all these
Tobormory.
places. Tobormory.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like cute looking ones, or had interesting menus or stuff, and they're all closed.
Right. Yeah.
On that note, as a logistics issue, when you're coming up to Tobermory, be sure you fill up on gas when you're in like Wyerton, because there are not a lot of options. And so, like I said, there's a grocery store, and I think there's a little hardware store, but it's not very well reviewed. But in terms of if you need anything while you're up on the peninsula, you're going to have a difficult time. So definitely get your gas ahead of time. And everything closes really early, apparently, all times of year.
Okay.
So, yeah. So just plan ahead and have what you need before you get onto the Bruce Peninsula. And then the last nearby attraction I can think of, do you want to adjust that?
Sure.
Sorry, our camera fell while we were ranting about here.
What's the last one then?
The last one, is the Devil's Monument. So we went to the Devil's Monument 2 days ago, and it's a hike. So basically what it is as you can see on the videos here, you can see those flower pot formations, the rocks that look like flower pots basically. And this is the biggest one on the peninsula. And you hike in to get it, and there's an overlook, and then you take a really steep set of steps down, like a staircase down, and then there's a nicer overlook that gets you right side beside it. It's beautiful, and you can go down from there to get to one of those rocky beaches. The thing is, the information on this place is very not clear. So I saw references to a pay lot, and then other references that said it wasn't a pay lot, and some were rating it an easy walk, and others were saying it was a difficult walk. And a lot of the time when it comes to like all trails, like the people that are rating trails sometimes are I think they have a skewed idea of what easy is.
Yeah, and
for people.
You and I differ too. You know, it's just I think some of it is just a matter of.
Well, I don't think it should be a perception thing. I think easy trail should be if it's flat, there's no roots, if it's like not necessarily wheelchair accessible, but if it's an easy trail.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
can see that.
I think if there's a steep inclines or climbing or big steps, or something, you can't call it easy. It might be easy for you, but it's not an easy trail.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I take issue when people take. There's actual straight up rock climbing involved and say it's an easy trail.
That's fair.
So, and I think it's like bragging too. I think it's I find this easy. It's like, well, that's not helpful information. That's not helpful information.
No, I agree.
So anyways, so we parked in what I thought was the right parking lot because it matched one set of descriptions of it. And it was coming at it from the north side of it. And it was a 1.6 kilometer trail from the parking lot to get there. Oh my God. Oh my God. That was
beautiful.
It was beautiful, but I was not prepared for that. And we had got me ready, like all the massage gun and A535 and, it took some Midol because that works really well on my muscles and tendons. And like we had me ready to take a hike because we thought it might be somewhat difficult. This was next level. This was like I stopped and I almost cried like halfway, and I was like, I can't do this, and I can't continue. And I was basically stuck because I'd already gotten through some really, really rough area, and I didn't feel like I could go back the way I came, and I didn't know what was ahead. So it was very stressful. So we get to the trail, and there's a couple there that have two babies. Like one's carrying a baby in his arms, like babies. The other one has it strapped to his chest. She had a baby strapped to the chest, and the dad was carrying him.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? So I asked where they came from. And they had a 500-meter walk to the other parking lot, which was a paid parking lot, that was an easy trail. So apparently I chose poorly because that could have been a whole lot less stressful for me. It was a gorgeous walk. I mean, there were gorgeous outlooks over the coastline and big cliffs that you'd be on. It was an amazing walk, but I did not need to do that day.
Yeah.
And I'm still paying for it. But yeah, so if I'd known that there was an easier walk there. So basically if you come at it from the south side, there's a Devil's Monument trailhead. I did not find anything called that on Google Maps. But you might want to take that if you've got mobility issues, because I would not recommend the trail we took if you've got any doubt as to your ability to do that was a workout. Like that was a workout for him, and he is able-bodied.
Just be aware on that trail that the outlooks, some of them are overlooks, as in like the rocks are overhanging. So personally, I don't feel comfortable being near the edge on something like that. But just be aware. Great views. Stay away from the edge.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary because you'll get further along on the view, like on the trail, and then you'll look back to where you were, and it was like a narrow ledge jutting way out. Like that was terrifying. So yeah, but anyways, if I was more able-bodied, I think it would be a fantastic hike. Because I'm not more able-bodied, I would have preferred to take the 500-meter easy way, or even from where we parked on the north side, because that was a free parking lot. It was about a kilometer, I want to say, on the way back.
Yeah, I think so.
It was about a kilometer from the parking lot to the monument, going south from there. Like the way we went, we had to cross the street and go into the woods. There's the other side of the trail walks along the road and then enters the woods. That path was pretty easy.
It was
on the way back, so I wish I'd known that, because if we were going to take the longer walk, I think that would have been, I mean, I know for a fact that would have been a whole lot more doable.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's another attraction here. So I guess we're at the end. So now we're talking our not our TLDR. The whole thing was TLDR. Our final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Love it. Obviously, we've been here 3 times.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my top 5 parks ever. Probably my number 1 overall.
Yeah, I can't think of what would come before it.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, it's definitely top 3, and I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'd have to really look over everything. But it loses some points on the logistics, I think. Like, I'm a little salty about the getting nickel and dimed,
No, I get that.
But it's worth it.
It's a little tough. We have a lot of solar panels, and it was barely getting anything just because of the heavy tree cover. So it makes it a little more challenging when we're trying to get work done and trying to, just do what we like to do. But obviously that's going to vary on what you like to do too.
Yeah, if you're a tent camper.
And generators are allowed, although I've not heard any, but there's not a lot of people
There's no one here. That's the thing. That's one thing I really like about this park is when we come here, like, because this is the second year we've done like around the Thanksgiving time, like right after Thanksgiving. There's no one. Like we saw a few people here at the Indian Head Cove the first day in the afternoon. I think they were day users. But generally speaking, like there are probably like 4 other families camping in the entire campground right now. Like it's not many people at all.
Yep, I love it. Indian Head Cove in particular here, I come out here several times during the trip just because I love it. There's so much to look at, so many different little areas, little overlooks and things. So
I think this might be my favorite place in the world.
Yeah,
like anywhere I've been, and I've been to some amazing areas because I used to live in Newfoundland. And like I've been to Lanso Meadows, and I used to, hang out in Petty Harbor and just overlook the ocean, and I loved it. Took amazing hikes there before I got crippled. And I think this is my favorite spot right here.
Yep.
Like over by those flower pots on the other side of the bay there, like looking out when it's rough weather. Like when we first got here, there's big crashing waves, and I could have sat there all day. It was just beautiful.
Definitely. And
but
with the Bruce Trail, we could actually walk all the way here. It goes all the way from Niagara to Tobormory.
I wonder if anyone's ever done the whole thing. I'm sure they have.
Yeah,
but like
somebody's been challenged.
That sounds masochistic.
It does, but
especially because we've seen. Because I forgot to mention is the Horse Lake Trail, where I said it spits out on the beach. Is you can continue going on the Bruce Trail to get to Indian Head Cove from there. But that is a wild walk, and like getting from the grotto over to Mar Lake, it's a wild. Like I mean, you're scaling rock and going up huge inclines, and it's not for crippled people like me. I mean, I do it anyway because it's worth it. But I mean, I'm coming out on the other end of it, and I have mobile days. I still pay for it, but it's if you have mobility impairments, like the best parts of this park are maybe not going to be something you're going to be able to see or do.
Yep.
So I'm really thankful that I'm starting to come out on. I'm hoping coming out on the other side of this tendon nastiness. But I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of the park as time goes on.
Definitely.
So we're definitely coming back.
Absolutely, we will be back.
And you should too. Watching this, you should definitely come check this out. Just not in October because I don't want more people in.
Fair enough.
I like our empty parks.
But check out our online review. You got more photos and all these details written down for you. So
More coherently too. It's like me trying to remember how long the trails are and everything. We've got the actual information down.
true, true.
Cool.
All right.
Let's go have breakfast.
Yeah, all right. Till next time. TLDR.